Well, welcome everyone. It's so great to have you here at our third annual WSU McNair Alumni Panel. My name is Dr. Raymond Herrera. I serve as Associate Vice Provost in the graduate school here at WSU. And it is my honor to welcome three of our WSU McNair alumni to serve on this panel this year. This is the first event in our National Trio Day celebration events for this year. We have some other events happening throughout the week. Tomorrow we have PB&J in the Cub. So if you're on Pullman, or if you're in Pullman on the Pullman campus, stop by tomorrow. Come say hi to us. We're handing out some goodies there. We also have tomorrow evening another talk from Policy to Practice, Office of Migrant Education and Federal Trio Programs. So that's on Zoom. And then on Friday in the evening, we have our keynote, The Currency We Carry, with Dr. Monica Cortez Vijaro. So please join us for those. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share here and go ahead and introduce our outstanding panelists by name, and then have them share their degrees, their trajectories, and so forth. So our first panelist this afternoon is Dr. Judith Hernandez Chaparro.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be sharing space with you all. Apologize for my voice. Getting over a cold, so yay. I'm happy to be here and to share a little bit about myself. I immigrated to the US when I was 13. I got the privilege of going to school at Pasco High School and did Running Star there, then transferred to WSU. And I was at WSU between 2003 and 2008. I got a chance to complete my first bachelor's in 2007 in Women's Studies. My second bachelor's in 2008 in psychology. And while at WSU, I was able to participate in the Student Support Services program and then subsequently the McNair program. In McNair, I had the opportunity to do two research projects. One focused on the kind of the navigational experiences of Latina women in the Yakima Valley and how their parents supported or not their educational trajectory. And then the second one was in literature analysis of how the focus of how we speak about Latinos in the research. It's been a while, but in research and how that had shifted from a very deficit perspective to a little bit of more strength-based in 2005, and that has obviously shifted since then. After WSU, I went to complete my master's in social work at Eastern Washington University. I completed that in 2010, took a 3-year break and was finally ready to come back to academia. So I went to Oregon State University and I pursued my doctorate there in educational administration focused on community college leadership. Since 2010, I've served in various leadership roles. Primarily, I started with my director of Trio at Lower Columbia College, and then I served that for 5 years and moved to South Puget Sound as Associate Dean of Title III and First Year Experiences. Decided that I wanted to get back into research, so I went to work at San Diego State University as a postdoc. So I worked there for a few months before coming back to the community college system at Clark College, where I worked as director of teaching and learning. So I oversaw faculty and staff professional development. But more recently, I've been serving as Dean of Student Support at Bellevue College while maintaining my research affiliate at San Diego State University. So I get to do all of that because of where I started. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Judith. Next we have, let's see, Dr. Dayla Randolph.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. I had the privilege of being in the inaugural group. So 2001 for McNair Scholars, so super exciting. seems like a while ago. So Judith, you knew even more about your research than I probably will even say that I do. But it's been a great journey, I think, that I've had. We'll talk a little bit about the program has really helped me. But from Seattle, grew up in Kent, went to Kent Ridge High School, and decided to go to WSU, and then joined the program. And I'm now in Chicago, and I think it's really cool that through the program, I had the opportunity to go to a conference in Dallas. And when I went to that conference in Dallas, I had the opportunity to meet a recruiter that recruited me to Northern Illinois University. And that's how I actually ended up here, through that conversation, which, the key for me is exposure. It was an opportunity to have exposure. I don't know that I would have ever ended up at NIU had I not gone to that conference as part of this program. So very grateful for that. I did my undergrad in psychology, started out as a microbiology major, got to organic chemistry and decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So I switched to psychology. And then while I was finishing there, had the opportunity to participate in the McNair Scholar Program. Dr. Craig Parks, who I looked him up, he's still there. So he's got a different role, of course, but I did look him up. I had the opportunity to do some work about worker response to change. What's really cool is I'm still in that space. I'm still helping folks with change management now, even in what I do. And it was part of my thesis and dissertation as well. So I kind of continued that thread of wanting to learn more about change management and what types of individuals were more resilient to change. That's really what I focused on. So went to grad school, like I mentioned, Northern Illinois University. I went just all the way through, got my master's, PhD there. And while I was finishing, I had the opportunity to start at a healthcare organization, Advocate Healthcare at the time, as an intern. 17 years ago. And I'm still with the same organization. We've grown quite a bit. So I've had the opportunity to start as an intern in the organizational development space. And another very cool kind of circle as I lead that space now for the organization, which is really cool that happened. I had the opportunity to work as an intern, met a VP of HR and doing that, and then went to work for him as a leadership development consultant. Stepped out of HR for a little while, became an operations leader, went back into HR, and took his job when he left as VP of HR. And then probably for the last 6 or 7 years, I've moved back to corporate in a role really focused on talent development for the organization. So Judith, heard you say a lot about professional development. That's a huge area of focus. Focus on succession planning in the organization. So, and I didn't say this, I got my degree, my PhD in IO psychology. So a lot of assessments, organizational development, all of those pieces. So I have a team that focuses on change management and helping individuals move through change. If you know anything about healthcare, we are growing very rapidly. So my organization now just went through we're going through an integration now. So about 150,000 team members now, and as of last week, got a new role, which is really cool. So leading the organization in the talent space. So my new title is Chief Talent Officer. So super excited about that in the organization. So I'll pause. We'll continue to talk, but that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Dela. Next, we have Dr. Karina Silva Garcia.
Hi, everyone, and congrats, Dela. It is an honor for me to be here. I am joining all the way from San Luis Obispo, California. Like Judith mentioned, I also moved to the United States when I was 13 years old. I graduated from Othello, Washington, then attended WSU from the years of 2010 to 2020. So bachelor's, master's, and PhD all the way from WSU. So go Cougs, I'm a true Cougar fan. And I loved it so much that I didn't want to leave. I did my bachelor's in human development, foreign languages, and certificates in family studies, global leadership, and Spanish. My master's is in prevention science, and my PhD is in prevention science. So at that time, when I was applying for graduate school, WSU was actually the first program in prevention science in the whole US. And it was very attractive to me because it allowed for me to have options, either if I could go into academia or more into the public setting or private settings, any other work environments. The cool thing about prevention science is that we learn how we could develop, implement, and evaluate programs. It could be in public health, behavioral health, and different different options. So that was very attractive to me. Once I graduated with my PhD, I accepted a postdoctoral position at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. That's what brought me to SLO. And I was part of their public health and kinesiology department. I was there for about a year and a half. Then I quickly realized academia was something that I was not very passionate about. I mean, yes, but I was more passionate about working with community. I felt like I often questioned myself, who is reading these articles, all this research that's happening, other researchers, and how is this getting back to the community? So I started looking for other opportunities, and I joined the county of San Luis Obispo in their public health department. I was a program manager for the home visiting programs, and then I got promoted to another position in behavioral health as a program manager for the Mental Health Services Act. And I can talk a little bit more about that as we move on, but this is my current position. I also work part-time with the School of Medicine at WSU. See, I love WSU so much that I don't want to leave it. I'm a research associate, and I work part-time with them 5 to 10 hours, and I help with an evaluation project that focuses on understanding experiences of mental health in the Latino community. So I get to do a lot of qualitative research with them, and I love doing that project. And I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you, Karina. So my first question, or I maybe just really wanting to hear from you folks, how you kind of told us how you ended up where you're at right now, but I heard a lot of different majors, a lot of changing of majors. I'm sure you had a plan at one point, but the plans change. And so we'll start with you, Judith. Can you tell us more about your academic trajectory from undergrad to grad? Were there certain events, people, interactions, experience you had that really helped to kind of define that journey for you?
Yeah, thank you. I went to college thinking I was going to go into law. I wanted to be a lawyer, not because I was passionate about the law, but because it was the only career that had been presented to me as a viable option to get out of poverty. Like growing up in Mexico, that was, be a lawyer and you're going to get access to X, Y, and Z. So came to the States with that in mind. So I started, my freshman year thinking I'm going to go into law. So I'm going to go for it. So I figured a degree that was going to be really broad, that would give me a really strong foundation in social justice, was going to get me into that space. And then in 2005, you all remember, or you're still living the Pullman winters. I fell down, I hit my head, had a head injury, and then I kind of got really worried that I wasn't going to be able to cut it in law school. I was starting to also feel like my English proficiency wasn't where I needed to be for me to be able to make it into law school. So I started looking at other options. I was really floundering at that point, trying to figure out what my next steps would be. And I remember just sitting in one of at the Chicano Latino Center, just sitting there trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And Francisco, who was the Chicano Latino coordinator at that point, just telling me, just choose something and then you'll find your next options. Like, you don't have to have a plan right now. You're 20 years old. Why are you freaking out about having a very clear plan right now? And that helped me at that moment ease that concern, but not necessarily figure out what I was going to do. I like plans. So I was fine. I'm going to choose something. And then sometime in between there, I started thinking, okay, so if law school's not an option, what's my next best step? And that's when I decided I was going to go into, I've always known that I was going to get a higher post bachelor's degree. I just didn't know what that was. And but going into the McNair program really gave me the tools to begin to comprehend what that life could look like. I remember being in the class with Ramon and trying to figure out what the heck qualitative and quantitative meant. And why was I learning these words? I had no context whatsoever for it. And we were in that research class and I was so lost, just trying to figure it out and why those things matter, and never really realized how that foundation would serve me well in the future. Yeah, so that I think that research class was really impactful for me, because it opened doors to things that once I made it into grad school, I wasn't struggling, because I had that foundation already. In terms of my shifting from law into higher education, I was at Eastern at that point, and I was gonna go into social work. I went in thinking I was gonna do a master's. I was doing a master's in social work, thinking I was gonna work in elder care. And after being a case manager for 2 years, I was burnt out. I realized that was not the right field for me. That try as I might, there was nothing I was gonna be able to do to change the system. I had worked with a client for a month to get them their Social Security benefits adjusted. And after working with him for about 45 hours, we got a 39-cent increase in his benefits allocations, the 39-cent increase. Then the subsequent month, his food stamp benefits were terminated. So for a 39-cent increase, he lost $200. And I was just devastated, because I had advocated for him to get that increase, and this cost him to lose his benefits. So all of this happening, I'm sitting down in my sorority sister's chair at Eastern, and she was a coordinator for the College of Citizens Migrant Program, and I'm sitting there just kind of crying, telling her I can't do this. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. Here I am 9 months from finishing my master's degree, and this is not the career that I want to go into. And she she helped me reframe all of my experiences and asked me like really insightful questions about what is it about social work that interested you in the first point. Tell me about your undergraduate experience. What did you enjoy about that? And the more I started talking to her, the more I realized that college access were the things that I was most passionate about, and that I wanted a change in the system, so that when people did get to be in their 80s, they weren't dependent on a really horrible system for their livelihood. So wanting to create more access earlier on. And she opened doors at that moment, created an internship for me in the College Assistance Migrant Program. And a week later, I was working there, supporting students with their educational journey. And after I graduated there, she encouraged me to apply for a director position. I had no business applying for it, but I went for it. And I got that director position at Lower Columbia. And since then, I've been in community college setting because of what that system can do for itself. Not for itself, but for the students that we serve. I'm at a point right now in my career, 13 years later, that I'm realizing that maybe community college is not the end all be all, and I need to start looking for other ways to impact systemic change. I think we're too caught up in the ways that systems work and not willing to look at other alternatives. So I'm considering what that next step would be for myself, but also for the systems in general. So it's been a whirlwind of 4 institutions since 2010, and trying to have bigger impact. So my motivation for promotions have been to what level of extent can I impact the system, and trying to figure out how to do that within my positional authority within the system. So it's been a good journey, but that's how I got started and how I am here right now.
It looks like we have a question already for Judith. We'll circle back to that. We'll go ahead and move on to our next panelist, and that'll be Dela.
Sure, thanks. I love you. I'm getting all caught up in her story. Okay, I'll shift to mine. I love hearing people's stories. I think I mentioned earlier that I had a little bit of a shift. And I will tell you, I clearly remember organic chemistry was part of that shift. Probably wasn't the only thing that had me shift, but I kind of started to think, man, if I don't go to medical school, do I want to be in a lab with microbiology? And I started thinking, I'm very much a people person. and just started to think about long-term, is that really what I wanted to do? And so I took a psychology class, super excited to I'm a people watcher. So why do people do things certain ways, right? And I happened to be sitting in that class, and I remember one of my just friends, we were in the class together, and she started talking about IO psychology, and I just got curious, what is that? What is IO psychology? And the quick way I say describe it is kind of business psychology. So that's an easy way to describe it. And so I had the opportunity that summer to intern with an individual who was in HR. He was from my church. So, one of my tips is network, really important. And so I interned with him for the summer, and he was laying people off. And I just saw all of this human behavior happening right in front of my eyes, some good, some not so good, and just curious about how you can help people. And that's kind of my thread. When I was, and I'm in healthcare now, but when I thought I wanted to be a doctor, it was all about helping people. And when I think about HR and spending that summer, it helped me realize that when you make people's lives better at work, that impacts and spills out into our communities, right? And so it's much bigger. That was my soapbox, and kind of I'm oh gosh, I'm really interested in this HR thing. And so, I continued on. I did the research. I think I probably always knew in the back of my mind that academia wasn't where I was going to end up. But it did afford me the opportunity through the McNair Scholar Program to prepare myself for everything I had to go through in grad school. And I chose that path. I think being from an underrepresented community, I knew that when I got to this level that I wanted to be able to compete with others that, maybe have had different experiences or backgrounds than me. So for me, my PhD really has helped me level set with other peers in terms of education. And when I'm vying for different roles, it's been helpful to have that background. But, so I think, and not only that, I feel now I'm doing research just in my work every day. So the day I took 3 years of stats, you all, in grad school, that was part of IO psychology. And so I know the numbers, right? I can ask certain questions. I've got a data insights team. I use them all the time. So we're doing research all the time. It's just to help us come up with solutions to help people in their everyday lives, whether that be benefits, compensation, career development, growth, right? And so I still know that all of that, what I did and that research and that background really helps me do better at what I do every day today. But I think really that pivotal experience for me was that internship that kind of opened my world to something different. And I pretty much stayed on that track. Continued to have internships or other experiences outside of doing what my day job, which was grad school at the time, but making sure that I was getting those experiences as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Karina.
Layla, I'm just here smiling, listening to your story too. And before I start with mine, just a small shout out to my little sister she's here. I'm so happy that she joined us, Maria. She is now a McNair Scholar, so I'm very proud of her. So for me, I want to start by saying, when I graduated high school, I never thought college was for me. As a first generation immigrant, Mexican, I never saw that example of anybody in my family pursuing a higher education. So I came in with the idea, and my parents, I feel like they really encouraged me, you have to be a doctor. And I was like, okay, my options are being a doctor or a lawyer. I didn't know that you have so many degrees and options. So I came in with that idea that I was going to be an MD and a pediatrician. I was set on that, and that did not turn out, as you all know. I took a human development class, and I loved learning about families, parent-child relationships. And one of the experiences that made an impact for me is I did an internship through Duke Student Action with Farm Workers, where I was doing outreach to farm worker families and educating them on different health topics. And that's where I learned about public health inequities. And I came back wanting to do public health. Unfortunately, WSU doesn't have a public health degree. Not sure if that changed now, but that's what I wanted to do, but they didn't have that. So I went with my human development major, which I loved, and I'm so happy that I did that. Another thing that made a big impact, Dr. H and the McNair program. I learned about the McNair program through my friends, that they were doing research. I kept talking about like, oh my God, this experience in North Carolina, I saw this and that and all this health inequities. And my friends were doing research in similar areas. So they told me like, have you thought about the McNair program, joining the McNair program? Or it's like, what is that? I mean, I didn't even know what research, what a PhD. I thought that you just graduate with your bachelor's and that's it. I didn't know that there's a master's, there's a PhD, and that's available for us too. I applied for the McNair program, I got in, I was able to do research. I even got a publication as an undergrad, and I was able to take graduate courses as an undergrad. So I feel like I am very proud of myself. I was doing all these things and over here doubting myself. And no, I mean, we worked so hard. And I feel like it was a constant, for me, reminder of like, yes, we are here because of our hard work, our skills, and because we do the work to be in these spaces. And nobody's giving us this anything for free or just because we're beautiful. I mean, we are, but so that was one of the things that I feel that made a big difference for me, and just having very supportive mentors along the way, including Dr. H, my graduate school mentor, Dr. Power with the human development, and just having a big support system, my friends. When I think back about WSU, it's all the friends that I made and the people that supported me and that believed in me, even when I doubted myself. Yeah, so I'll stop at that.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. So go ahead and jump in as you feel moved. But this next question is really for all of you about your life as a professional with a PhD. I'm sure you had some notions as you were going through undergrad, figuring out what a PhD was. You're in grad school, working towards this PhD. But now that you've had your PhD for some time, is it what you thought it would be? Is it different? Tell us about your life now.
I'm so happy after. It's so much better once you're done. So much better. I feel like when I was going through grad school, I kept doubting myself a lot. I mean, just not seeing a lot of people that look like you or not seeing yourself represented in the articles that you're reading. It really makes you question your belonging. And now that I feel that on the other side, it's so much better. I mean, I have time to read personal development books. I have time to travel, and I feel like it's way better. I even became a yoga certified instructor. I mean, it's great afterwards.
So I'll just second that. I wasn't really sure how I was going to answer that question. When you said that, I'm like, yes. Like I do remember saying I'm not reading anything for a really long time, and I probably don't read as much as I used to. I probably listen to podcasts a little bit more, right? Like I'll turn on Audible and listen to a book, just because it is freeing, right? But it does give you that maybe balance a little bit more back to life. You know what I always say, and I think I wrote something email not very long ago, but it really is about persistence and just getting through. When I think about the folks that stopped and didn't make it, and they think about their reasons for it, it's like if they would have just pushed and kept going, and it gets hard and there's all kind of obstacles and research goes left or right, never the way you want it to go. And just, keep pushing through. And once you get on that other side, it is, very different. And like for me, I told you, it has impacted and opened doors for me from a career perspective that I didn't necessarily expect that it would. And so that has been helpful as well. So keep going.
Yeah, ditto to everything you both stated. Life is different afterwards. I think I'm navigating. I realized that it's been 7 years since I graduated with my doctorate, and I'm still trying to navigate that space to take ownership of the degree and not feel like I am imposing on others when I introduce myself as doctor. So trying to navigate that world afterwards, especially in my community, and going back home and people not really understanding what that means, and still having to do all of that educating about, okay, it's a doctorate degree, but I'm not a medical doctor. I've had friends call me and say, hey, I'm having this medical issue. No, that's not me. I can't help you with that. and then not understanding those dynamics, that's a little bit different. That still puts me in a place of educating others. The part that I would say that I wish I would have heard earlier on, as I was going through talking about persistence, is that things are going to go south so many times in your degree path, and you just kind of have to stick through with it. And it sounds really masochist to say that you just have to stick through with it, but you look for other resources, other paths, other avenues, and find support and community. When I was going through my last year of my doctorate program, my major professor, like the main person that supports you through that, left from Oregon State to San Diego State University. I had just submitted my request for IRB, and I was ready to go with my dissertation data and everything else ready to go. And she transitioned, and the IRB board decided that it was an undue burden on me to have to travel to San Diego to get access to my data that was physically located there. So they revoked my IRB status, and I had to start over with my dissertation process. So I had to pivot and start over and like look at other alternatives. So I had to look into publicly available data and do my research from that standpoint. It ended up being not the research that I wanted to do, nor the quality of work that I wanted to produce for a dissertation. But guess what? I got it done, and it is a dissertation that it's done. It's not the end all be all. And I always felt like that had to be the end all be all, that it had to be my most perfect work. But once someone reframed that for me as it is a work in practice, you're not an expert yet. That's why you're going through schooling right now to do that. And once that reframing happens, I was able to say, okay, fine, I'll let it go. I'll do this work that's still okay, and I will get this degree, and then I can do other things. So that, I think that's the part that I want to echo what you all were saying, is that there's so much hard things happening in the degree plans, but you have to pivot and you have to keep going. And if I had given up at that moment, because I felt like giving up once I had to start over with my data analysis and all that stuff, felt like, what's the point? But this also sounds cheesy, but because I worked in federal funding programs, I knew that I'm gonna have to have so many number of degrees produced within 10 years. And so I was like, okay, I gotta get it done. Next year is gonna be my 10th year anniversary of graduating with my first bachelor's degree. So there's no option that I'm gonna be the person why the program doesn't get funded for next year. So that was also a motivator for me. And it sounds a little bit cheesy, but it helped me get through it.
Hey, whatever works. Yeah, we appreciate it. We got your points, Judith. So thank you so much. So I heard a couple of things there in terms of advice to our current scholars and maybe grad students that might be joining us. First is to persevere, keep going, and done is done, finished is finished. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just keep moving forward. Give us some more advice. Drawing upon your time at WSU and McNair, what other types of advice would you share, with our current students, based on your experiences at WSU and in McNair?
I want to take a point of privilege and go back to the question Nancy posed, only because I think it's related to this. How I stay motivated is I allow myself to feel low. Like if I'm not feeling it one day, I'm not feeling it. I'm not going to force myself to keep going for that one day or that 1 week. So I come up with a plan of, at least for myself, okay, I'm not feeling it this week. I'm not gonna force myself at this point. If I have a deadline next week, then I'll address that then. But for right now, I'm gonna feel sad. I'm gonna feel mopey and all the things that I need to do to take care of myself. But then after that time frame, then I'll get to doing it again. And that really helps me just kind of process those feelings. I think we live in a society that doesn't really allow for sadness too much or for feeling low too much. And the moments that we start denying that humanity in ourselves, and that's the moment that we're gonna fail. So giving myself time to do that, and then coming up with a plan of action. Okay, I'm sad because X, Y, and Z. Here's what I can do. But then, my community, I have at WCU, I had my sorority sisters that really helped me process a lot of that. They understood where I was coming from. And I had a community there. Getting out of WCU and moving on to or even out of my graduate programs, I'm moving into my professional life. That community is so much harder to come by. So having to be more intentional about networking, connecting with others, figuring out what struggles other people are having so that I can be there for them and vice versa. So getting a lot more intentional in community building. So to just kind of tie it all back together, I would say that right now is the time for you to start building your support networks and coming up with 1 or 2 friendships that are going to guide you through and help you through your life beyond. 2 of my best friends are from my time at WSU. One happens to also have done McNair with me. My spouse was also in the McNair program at the same time as I did. So both of us get to talk about those shared experiences. And then my brother, like you, Karina, my brother got to do the McNair program as well and went on to do his master's program. And he still has that bug there for his doctorate. So it's just kind of finding that community and that space to heal together that helps you keep moving forward.
And I want to echo what Judith was saying, just about like being kind to ourselves and taking that time to take breaks, and being compassionate with ourselves. I feel like we're so good with other people, and sometimes the most important person and that relationship that we have with ourselves needs to also be kind and compassionate. One of the things that helped me, and one of the things that I kept saying to myself when I was going through grad school, this is only a step towards where I want to go. Like, living in California was my dream. I've always envisioned myself living in California, and I knew that I needed to have a good job to support myself living in California. So I knew that was going to happen like after graduation. And I remember going to school on Sundays, on weekends, to study for statistics or other classes that just require, for me, that much time. And I just kept saying to myself, this is only a step forward. This is only temporary. This is not always going to be like this. This is only a time in my life where it's going to take me to where I want to go. And I definitely encourage you to find your support system. I know when I was going through my postdoctoral fellowship, I know that I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into academia or other. And I just applied to a lot of postdocs because that's what I thought I should do as a PhD graduate. And I did get into the postdoctoral, which was 2 years, but I left early. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. Like, what are you thinking? This is supposed to be a privilege being in a program like that. And I really did felt like I was, like, in a way, like a failure because I wasn't finishing my postdoc. But ultimately, I had to do what was best for me. And what was best for me was to leave that postdoc program for another position that made me much happier. And actually, in the other position that I applied, I helped write a grant that was almost like a $1 million, and we got it. And it was providing direct services to community, which made me so much happier because I felt like I was actually contributing to community, and that's what made my heart happy, like being in the community and providing those direct services or making an impact in a different way.
I would say I wouldn't add a ton to that. Giving yourself grace is just such a good one. So definitely very good advice. So one thing that I'll just expand upon with the networking and having your support system, and I teach this now even to our leaders, is to try to diversify that a little bit, right? So not just folks that are, yes, you need those that love you and are going to support you, that those friendships. My best friends I met at WSU also that are my best friends even today, but outside of your normal circle, right? So that you can network, expand. Exposure is huge. So networking and exposure. So put yourself in settings so that you can see different environments. It just broadens your horizons and creates more possibilities. And then if you need to pull on those resources from folks that are maybe outside of your normal circle, you're starting to build that. So that's kind of, I say, call it your personal board of directors, right? That you kind of help push you forward. And so that would be my only additional advice in addition to what others shared right now. I was going to say, when you're going through the research process, to like love what your research, like love the topic, because you're going to hate it by the end, if that makes sense. Even if you love it. But Judith had a whole different story that gave me a different perspective with your story as well. But that has been my advice to others, is like, by the end, you're going to be so tired of it. So if you're able and blessed to be passionate about the topic, go for that.
Excellent, excellent. I have one more question, a prompt for you, and then we're going to move it in or on to our guests here. Advice for faculty and administrators and staff on diversifying higher education and other professions.
I can start. This is something that I always say: representation matters. Seeing ourselves represented in curriculums and classrooms, that matters. And as much as we can incorporate representation in the different ways that we're doing, including community as part of our curriculums. I remember when I was at Cal Poly, I taught public health courses, and I remember just reaching out to my network in the community and asking them to come and speak to our class. And students loved it because you get to see real world examples and different perspectives. So incorporating that into curriculums and our environments, into the things that we're reading too. And
yeah, I'm in it right now. I think instilling higher education just in a different hat. I'm always wondering, like, how do I make that happen for my students? And one of the things that I've noticed is that if the environment for the staff and the faculty is not a healthy one, the students are going to suffer. So I think we have a moral obligation at this point to make sure that the environment we're creating for our own staff members and our own faculty is a healthy one, where they themselves are supported and they have opportunities for growth and their own development. So as administrators, we have that responsibility to make sure that I'm providing professional development pathways to my staff members. I supervise 69 people now, and I feel like if I'm not creating that environment, then they themselves can't go on and create a positive, engaging environment for my students. So as an administrator, I would say that's an impetus. Like, we have to do that, and also make sure that the people we're hiring, like Karina said, is representative of the populations that we want to keep in higher education. And then finally, to understanding kind of the demographics of the students that we're serving, what community matters for them, and how community is represented outside of the very structured classroom environments that we have, and going above and beyond that. And that's it.
I don't think I have anything to add. I think those are all great.
Okay, questions from our audience here. Advice you have for the job search after graduate school. We'll make it a two-parter. Advice for kind of that first job out, or how to land that, and then what skills did you rely on when you're shifting your career?
I guess I'm off mute. I'll start. I mentioned earlier about just having the experiences of internships. I think, if you're able to do that, that might help direct you. It might say, no, I don't want to do that, because you try it out, or maybe you do. But if not, and you have kind of an idea or a thought, I would interview folks, like spend time with individuals, come up with a set of questions that you can ask just to see if there's a particular area that you might be interested in. And then what I would tell you is your first job might not be exactly what you want, but it may be what you need. So be open and willing to take that as a stepping stone to get you to where you would like to be. So I would say first job, be open, learn what you can from that, network, as we keep mentioning, to help you kind of move forward. So I would say those are a couple of things to think about as you're trying to land that first job. Resume is important. Interview is more important, right? So just keep that in mind. Take that from somebody that looks at resumes every day. Conversation is key.
I'm also wondering if you've noticed this in your field right now, but for me, I get so many requests for informational interviews about what my job looks like or what jobs are opening in my area, but they seldom come from people who are like myself or share my background. It's often I get them from middle-aged, white identified males. And I don't see a lot of other people asking for that time or feeling that like they have access to me as a resource. So if I was in your shoes again, I wish somebody would have told me that it's okay to look at the position that you want and reach out to that person and talk to them about their experiences, what's happening in their day-to-day work. It's a little bit challenging to be, I want to provide that environment for everybody, but I want my community to get access to me and the resources that I'm able to offer. So I encourage you to start with that resource and just ask questions about that. And when I grow up, I want Nayla's position one day. So I think I'm gonna, with your permission, go ask you some questions about that and what your trajectory is there. And I shared earlier that I'm thinking like I may want to look outside of higher ed in the future. And that's one of the positions that I'm looking into. So right now, curating a lot of my experiences to target to that. You're asking like what skills are we using to pivot? My ability to research right now is really insightful. It helps me look at what career fields that I may want to consider outside of education. I'm thinking about what skills do I have right now that are transferable outside of my position. My ability to connect with people, kind of do a lot of analysis of systems is really helpful. So a lot of that skills that you're learning right now are transferable skills, but sometimes I think we get too caught up in what I've done that I would never look outside of it. So I'm relying on those skills right now to evaluate what my next steps are going to be in the next 3 years for myself. So it's never something that gets done.
I agree. Just echoing what has been said before, network, and ask for help. People usually want to help. And I remember when I first graduated and I was applying for postdocs, I had one friend that was doing a postdoc. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I got an interview. First of all, I didn't know that getting an interview was a big deal. I just thought everybody would get an interview. So you learn. So if you ever apply for a postdoc and get an interview, that's an amazing thing. And he helped me. These are the questions that they might ask you. Okay, practice with me. What would you say about this? Be ready for this. Be ready for that. Have you looked at this? Make sure that you know this, or ask them about this. So if you know people that have done that, ask for help. Oftentimes we don't want to reach out, but reach out. People usually want to help, and you'll, yes, just ask for help.
Okay, this next question is for Dayla. When you do research now in your job, do you publish it or present it at any conferences?
Yeah, so we do quite a bit of that, probably not as much as we could. I will tell you, because of where I sit, I probably don't personally do that as much, but I definitely encourage my team to do that. I also have like simulation, which is kind of a unique clinical team, but they just this past January presented a ton of their research that they've done in terms of interventions to help our patients be, I don't want to say survive, but that is the business that we're in. Ultimately, it is to survive. And so we do that. Leadership development, if we've got interventions or great programs, we will go and showcase that at some of our HR conferences. And so, yeah, lots of that happening, probably not as much as we could, but we do.
All right, thank you. This question is for Karina. In your job as program manager now, what would you want students to know more about if they are interested in this field?
Yeah, so I think Judith mentioned it, that a lot of their skills, or Dayla, I can't remember, but some of the things that they mentioned, that a lot of the skills that we learn in graduate school are transferable. They are. And we can market ourselves very well. So as a program manager, I use my degree all the time, and I love what I do as a program manager. So my title is Mental Health Services Act Program Manager. And what this is California has this act that it taxes millionaires 1% of their income. All that income goes back to the state, then the state distributes that funding among counties, and depending on the population, That's how that's how many millions you get. So our team is responsible for how we utilize this funding for mental health services, prevention, treatment, and recovery. And the team that I'm responsible or I manage, we are gathering all the data, we are managing contracts. So we do a lot of the data analyses, we analyze data, the contractors submit data to us, and we manage contracts. A little bit more about the things that I do is I do use a lot of like my leadership skills because I am responsible for leading a team. And I am probably one of the youngest program managers in our division, but I'm not afraid of that. And one thing that I remember somebody in grad school said to me is, when you introduce yourself as a doctor, people will listen to you. And it's not that I'm coming in with like this superiority or anything, but in a way it does bring like that respect, or people will come to you and listen to what you have to say. So definitely a lot of the skills that you learn in grad school are transferable, and I do really enjoy managing all those contracts, data, a team, being part of a team, and working with communities. And if you want to learn a little bit more about it, feel free to, I can post my email and LinkedIn. That actually works for me too.
All right, we're getting close to the end of our time together today. I do want to invite our attendees to go ahead and ask your questions or share any comments directly. Feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and to engage with our panelists.
Well, as we go through TRIO week, or whatever we wanted to say it, thank you. The other reason why we do this, it is so rewarding. I'm sure Dr. H can tell you, so rewarding to know that something said a decade or so ago, it really does flourish and gives back. I'm frozen. There we go. Really does flourish and give back to the community in such ways. And
You're muted, Carrie.
was I muted the whole time?
No, not the whole time.
Oh, it kicked me out. I don't know what's going on with Zoom. So sorry, guys. I just want to thank you. Yay, TRIO. And my question for you is, I talk to my students a lot who try to become something and really focus on themselves as human doings and not human beings. When would you say, I would say, particularly as women of color in a world that you're usually the first, only a different one in the room, when did you find that confidence to be like, listen, I'm not for everybody. This is, when would you say you finally felt that freedom? Like, I'm not trying to fit in. And what did it take to do that?
I'm laughing because I'm still finding that. I feel like it changes so much, so often. I always go back to my first job, and now that Lucy's here, I want to thank you for your mentorship on that. I feel like I had to keep going back to my mentors and looking at how they operate and how they hold themselves in environments, and just being in that first position, feeling so inadequate, being 25 at a director level, you're responsible for people that were twice, if not more, my age, feeling really overwhelmed, and looking at my mentors and saying, okay, so this is how she's running a meeting. I can do that. I always look back at that first meeting, my first week in the job. Lucy invited me to her staff training. And you may not remember this, Lucy, but I was just sitting on the outside of the table, just really taking everything in and trying to find, okay, this is how this person navigates this environment. I can do that. And I continue to do that over and over, seeing who's the next person that I'm going to look up to so that I can learn from them and I can find my voice. And I'm more secure in myself now. I can take ownership of my voice and my power and everything. But that is still happening for me all the time. And now I'm looking at the younger generations and seeing, okay, what do I need to learn from them in finding who they are and how they voice their struggles and their successes. So I think for me, it's it's an ongoing process, and I find myself more every day. But I'm really looking forward to the time I turn 40, because I think like magically that's going to be the day where I find my voice. And I said that at 35, it didn't happen. So, like I have goals for myself to find my voice, but it happens.
It does get better after 40, I have to say. I feel like I'm halfway through anyway. Might as well do my way.
I'm going to listen to that, Carrie.
I was going to say, so I got my first VP role when I was 30. I also was afforded the opportunity to have an executive coach at that time. And he told me, white male, but was a very good executive coach for me at that time. And he said, like, how do you want to show up every day? I have been a person, like, I do lead with relationships. Right. And so that's who everybody's like, oh, we love Dayla, all of that. But I wasn't necessarily leading with this all the time. That didn't show up first. And that was a turning point for me. And that very same week, my boss, and so there was 15 VPs on my current team. There were 2 other Black individuals on the team. And he made a comment to me that I need to watch where I sit in the room and not necessarily just sit with the other 2 Black VPs. And for some reason, like, obviously that didn't rub me the right way, because all of the white individuals, there was never a comment about them sitting together. So between that and that conversation that I had that week, I do think that changed how I showed up every day at work. I sat by who I wanted to, and I still contributed and led a little bit differently than I had been leading before. And so that, like, is very clear in my mind. Now I'm 43, Judith, and some days are better than others related to that. But I do think I remember that being a pivotal point for me in my career and how I showed up. And I sometimes I say I'm 43 now, I sometimes have to go back to that moment to remind myself. So it's not like you stay in one place, right? We change as life changes, but I keep that in mind. So thank you for the question. It's an important one. I don't know if we ever arrive, but it does get better, Carrie, right? To your point.
Right, it does.
Yeah, it's definitely a work in progress for me too. And I am 31, so I am one of the youngest managers in upper management in my division. But I also remember that there are other few Latinos where I work, and it's important for them to see representation. So sometimes I do come to the office with my huaraches, and that does not change. And I feel like I am becoming stronger, more confident as the time with time. So I know that that's a learning progress for me. And I do have to go. I have another meeting at 1, but I just want to end with saying to you all, ask for help whenever you need to. Please take up space as your most authentic self. Your ideas are brilliant, and you matter, and your ideas matter. Network, and always do your best with the resources, knowledge, and awareness that you have. Thank you all for having me, and it's been an honor. Thank you. And reach out to me if Dr. H has my contact info.
Thank you, Karina. We'll talk soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Okay, friends. I see Lucy's joined us. Lucy, any words?
No, just join us tomorrow as we continue our trio celebration events. And we're going to be talking about policy to practice and highlighting trio with Carrie and Michael, talking about camp and how these good ideas, play out in higher education. So hope you can join us. Oh, it's always so great to see our WSU Cougar alumni. So yeah, thank you, Dr. H, for putting this fabulous team together.
Thank you so much. Dr. Judith, Dr. Dayla, it's been awesome. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful catching up with you, hearing all the wonderful things that you're up to, and sharing your words of wisdom with our current scholars and other graduate students who have joined us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And as Lucy mentioned, we do have some events later on this week. And I'll show those here. So if you can join us, please come back and hang out with us a little bit more. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful panel, and have a wonderful Wednesday. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.